Hey,
Hey,
here I am. Hello. So I'm very excited to be here. Thank you guys for inviting me. So first and foremost, my name is Steenz. I am a cartoonist and an editor and an educator, and I do a lot of different things in the comics industry. And today I'm just going to, don't worry about that. Don't worry about it. Today, I'm going to talk to you guys about how I got started, what kind of work I'm doing, and then we're going to get into making some zines. So let me share my screen so you can see my presentation that I put together for you guys. Okay. Can you guys see it? I assume yes. Okay, so my name is Steenz. Usually when I do these kinds of presentations, I kind of like to go through what my trajectory was. I find that a lot of people just want to know, like, how did you start? Where did you go? How did you get to where you are today? And so I think there's a combination between, an education trajectory and also my comics trajectory. So I went to high school, I went to college. I eventually left college because it was getting too expensive. And I ended up working at Victoria's Secret and Hallmark and a lot of, places just to make money and live like, we need to. And while I was doing that, I was doing a lot of fan art. I was doing painting in school. I was doing storybook illustrations. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with the skills that I had, but I knew that I had them. So that's kind of where I was at that point. Eventually, I started working at Star Clipper, which is a comic book store here in St. Louis, Missouri. And while I was there, I started doing some slice of life comic strips, and someone recommended to me that I join the local group Ink and Drink Comics, which is a local group here where every season they put out a new anthology, and it's all based on different genres of comics. So westerns or romance or crime, horror, etc. And doing that was a really great opportunity for me because even though, I wasn't getting paid for the work, it was a great opportunity for me to learn how to actually put comics together digitally, work with editorial, work with a collaborator. It was a really great opportunity, and I learned a lot from doing it. I usually say you learn the most by doing when it comes to comics. After I left working at the comic book store, I started working at the library. I was a comics focused librarian. I expanded their graphic novel memoir collection. I helped them create their zine library, which required a lot of education about zines and how to put them into the system so that they could be checked out by people. While I was doing that, I was still making comics, honing my craft, not really knowing, what I wanted to do with it. And a friend of mine, Ivy, decided, hey, why don't we work together and put out a webcomic? And so we worked on the webcomic. We were really excited. We were like, this is going to be really fun. And then Oni Press, which is the publisher that published Archival Quality, they put out a open submission. And so we decided, why not? What's the worst that could happen? Because if we don't get in, we'll just put it up online anyway. So we might as well. We have nothing to lose. So we applied and we submitted our work, and they chose it to be published. So after that, it was like a whirlwind. My comics career just kind of took off from that moment. And after I started doing more graphic novels, I was doing short stories and other anthologies and doing my own comics as well. And as I moved to a different job working in editorial at a comic book publisher, I was still just, making comics while working. It wasn't my full-time job, and that was totally fine. I didn't mind it. I actually really like having, comics be my side thing as well. And then after I left working at the publisher, that's when I decided to go freelance and to do editorial. And I got a job teaching cartooning at my local university. And also I got reached out to work on the syndicated comic strip Heart of the City. So a lot of things were coming up Steenz in 2020, which is really nice, considering the year. But that's kind of where it went. I basically, I did all the things that I like to do, and I continue to do those things that I like to do. And when you do something that you are passionate about, it shows, and not just in your work, but also to other people when it comes to what you want to do and what you're good at. And I always liked adaptations. And so that's probably why I was picked to do Heart of the City, which we'll get into a little bit more. But here's some of the art that I do. Like I said, I like to do a lot of fan art. So I do Miles Morales and Kamala Khan. I also like drawing my cat's butt. He's just, he's a nice cat to look at. I also do comics for a lot of different reasons. I'll do comics for magazines. I did a comic on the importance of voting. I did a thing about how it's really great to make an event out of voting. After you go, we usually go and get pancakes, So I also did some illustrations of if I were to do a Nancy Drew comic, what it would look like. And one of the other things that I really like to do still is I like to do silly comics that don't really look that great because I really just focused on getting the story across. And I think that shows in the work that I do, is that, the idea is to make you laugh. It doesn't need to be anything perfectly beautiful, because that's one of the things that I like about comics, is that anyone can be a comic artist. You don't have to be, you don't have to go to art school, to be perfectly honest. You just have to continue to study the craft. You can study it on your own. You study it by doing. And I think making these fun comics that aren't incredibly polished is a good way for me to stay loose and continue creating without having to worry about, is this good enough? Okay, so Heart of the City. So I was approached by an editor at Andrews McMeel. Her name was Sheena. And she was like, hey, what do you think about syndicated comics? And I was like, I've read them, they're in the newspaper. So I didn't really know a whole lot about the industry. Comics industry and syndicated comics industry are so different. But that didn't mean I didn't want to do it, So I definitely was like, well, let's talk. Let's look into it. And so after auditioning for about, 2 months or so, it felt like a while. I eventually got the gig, which I was very happy about. And so a lot of things that I had to do when I got it was start doing a lot of artwork of these characters. Heart of the City was a series that had been going on for about 21 years by the original creator, Mark Tutuli. And after, 20 years of doing a daily comic strip, he wanted to retire, which very, very fair. But they didn't want to get rid of the product. They felt it was had an opportunity to be updated and to still reach out to readers in 2020. And so that's what I did. I took the work that he did and I revamped it for a new audience. And so it was a really interesting opportunity. But here are some of the comics that I do for it. One of the fun things about doing a syndicated comic strip is that you're constantly thinking of like different ideas, and so I'm always taking notes in my Google Drive as this would be kind of a funny story. It's an ongoing comic, so, and I'm contracted for like ever, so I have to continue to think about stories. Some of the other comics that I have done, Archival Quality, which I mentioned before, was my first graphic novel. Deadbeats and Elements Fire were 2 anthologies that I was in. I also think doing anthologies is super important, especially if you are really interested in breaking into the industry. Anthologies are a great way to get practice, with creating for a collected edition. It also is a great way for you to make money as well. When that anthology comes out, you can go to conventions and you can sell it, I also did mine. I did some artwork for Fairy Fire. It's actually like probably exactly that size. And this one was the one that I think a lot of people gravitated towards, because I took, an established creator and I changed it to something new. And I think that that's something that people gravitate towards. I am also an editor. So I was an editor for almost 2 years at Lion Forge, and now I am editing with a bunch of other people. So I'm editing with individuals and Matt Cave Studios, and these are some of the things that I have edited in the past. Rolled and Told was a gaming magazine specifically for D&D 5e. I did superhero comics, graphic novels, magazines. I worked with Tapas, which is, similar to Webtoon, if you're familiar with that. I also help people with their pitches when it comes to pitching to a publisher. Because I used to be an editor and because I have pitched to publishers before, I work with people to make sure that their pitches are airtight and ready to go to send to either an agent or an editor or whatever they want to do with it. And The World's Strongest was actually one of those that I had done, and it ended up getting published at Action Lab, which is great. So I wanted to talk about the process of doing a syndicated daily comic strip. So, some people think it's as simple as you wake up in the morning, you think of an idea, that's your comic strip, that's all you have to do for the day. That would stress me out, mostly because I feel like I couldn't come up with something off the cuff like that. So what I decided is I sent in storylines in bulk. So I'll do 3 months of stories. I'll have an idea for a story, like for example, in the what I've got up on the screen, Hart wants to be in the school play. And so I think about the entire story from beginning to end. Okay, so she wants to be in the school play. She's super excited about it. She is trying to figure out what she's going to do for her audition. And all of these things that go into the story from beginning, middle, and end, I make sure to write them all down into like one paragraph. And then when I have that paragraph, then I take one piece of the story and I put it to a day: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And eventually I end up with, 2 weeks worth of comic based on one overarching story. And I feel like that's a lot easier for me to do. And those are the kinds of stories that I like to tell. I'm not really the kind of cartoonist that does, current events gag strips. I mean, they still do take place in the world around us. They live in 2020 and, they go to school, they know what Disney Plus is, but, I'm not going to be, writing about COVID and the stressors of the election. And it's like, most of that is because I don't want to read about it, so why would I make it? That's one of the nice things about the job, actually, is that I do have so much freedom as to what I want to put out there. So once I send all of that to my editor, she approves it, she'll make notes, and then now I have 3 months worth of storyline that I can just pull from every time I get started on working. So every week I do 2 strips a day. And whether that's the roughs or the finals. So I'll do, like in this example here, these are 4 rough ideas of what the comic strip is going to look like. So I'll send Monday through Sunday to my editor on Monday. I'll send it to her and I'll say, take a look at it. Do you have any edits? She'll edit it and send it back to me. That way, next week, when Monday comes around again, all I have to do is take the draft that I had already done and clean it up, finalize it, solidify it. And so this is how it looks when they finally get solidified. And this is actually from this week. So if you go to gocomics.com/heart of the city, you can actually read all of these. Another thing that's different in strip comics versus graphic novels and single issue comics is that I don't color my work. The only coloring that I do is on Sundays. So I actually turn in all of these strips like what's on the screen, and they color it, they send it back to me for approval, and then it goes off to be printed in newspapers and sent across the world. And then Sundays are a little different because some newspapers only purchase Sundays. you know? So if you're doing an overarching storyline, you don't want your Sunday to be a part of a storyline and it doesn't really make sense. You know, that's another thing that you have to think about when it comes to strip comics. Sometimes people aren't reading it every single day, you know? So each one of the daily comics have to be on its own, relatively finished. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And also fit into the larger story. Well, a Sunday has to be relatively self-contained, and it can fit in if you're reading all of it, but it shouldn't rely on the overarching story. So I have to do those Sundays separately, because not only is the story cadence different because it's a completely different size, it's also can't really follow with the overarching storyline that I'm working with. But I also still send them to my editor just like this, very rough. And they're really focused on making sure that the jokes land more than the art, which is another thing that's different from comics. When you're working in like graphic novels and single issue comics, your editor is going to be like, oh, well, make this change, make that change, work on the inking, work on the coloring. The lighting doesn't really, you know, work. When it comes to the syndicated comic strips, it's like they believe that you know what you're doing, and they really just focus on making sure it's funny, which makes sense, and was definitely harder to get used to, but I'm used to it now. So and then this is how a Sunday will end up. So that's my presentation about the comics that I make. So we can, maybe if you want to do some questions before we get into making zines, perhaps?
Yes, we have a question from Mick Rabin. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Where can I read the comics you did about voting? So I think you shared in one of your.
Yes, so there's actually an entire website where Oni Press actually did a voting comic per state. And so my comic was for the state of Missouri. I think it was called, yes, Draw Out the Vote. So if you go to drawoutthevote.com, all you have to do is jump to your state and you can see the comic for your state in the United States. Here, I'll put it in the chat. Drawoutthevote.com. But yeah, it's nice because you can look at them, you can download it, you can print it, you can do a lot of stuff with the comic. And this is the kind of stuff that I like to do. You know, I want to do stuff that helps people and gets information out to the masses.
All right, we have another question from Vince Alvendia. What are some of your favorite strips, or what strips inspired and influenced you?
That's a very good question. So when I was younger, I read the dailies like ritually. I was a big fan of Jumpstart. I was a big fan of Kathy, which is funny because I know Kathy is very much like for, you know, 30-year-old women, but I loved every second of it. Garfield, Peanuts, I'm sure there's plenty of others, Baby Blues. I mean, pretty much most of the nationally syndicated ones, those are the ones that I definitely read. The ones that inspire me now, definitely Nancy. Nancy is a good one. It was actually kind of wild. I got to actually meet and talk to Olivia, who does Nancy right now, and it's like a huge deal, her Nancy comics. And it's nice to see other people, you know, my age breaking into syndicated comics, mostly because it's so hard to, you know, no one leaves because it's such a cushy job. But yeah, Nancy is another good one. But another thing that's interesting about my comic, because it isn't a current event gag strip and it's an overarching story strip, most of my inspiration comes from other overarching stories, so like graphic novels. So you know, I was reading Witchy by Ariel Reese. I actually just finished one called Seance Tea Party by Raymina Lee. And it was really, really, really great. So yeah, my inspiration comes from graphic novels. It comes from other syndicated comic strips. Oh, there's another one that I just started reading, Crabgrass. Oh my gosh, so hilarious. So yeah, I read a lot of comics.
Okay, let's see. We have Nathaniel Batchelor asks, when it comes to zines, what's your personal experience and the differences between fanzines and comic magazines?
Mm. So a zine, where is my zine? I just had it. Oh no, oh here it is, right here. Okay, so fanzines, like the zine that I'm going to show you how to make today, this is actually a zine that I made for season 1 of Columbo, which I'm watching all of. What I find is that fanzines are oftentimes incredibly niche, and that sometimes it doesn't give you like any information at all. But then there are other zines that are super informational, and that's really one of the histories of zines, is that most of the time they were made to get information out to people that wasn't getting out in any other ways, you know. So places that you can go for help if you're homeless, different ways to rethink how you interact with people. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I like to see in zines as well. So I mean, another thing that about zines is that anyone can do it, because the level of skill it takes is like on the ground floor. As long as you can fold and you can cut, you can make yourself a zine. And it can be about anything too. You know, when it comes to comics or like long form comics, you need something that's going to engage people. You know, it's got to be an overarching story. It's got to be exciting. It's got to be sad. But with zines, because they're so short and sweet, they can be about fleeting thoughts. They can be about literally anything. And I think opening that up to people is really great. I don't actually remember what the question was. Did I answer the question?
Um, let me double check the question.
Yeah.
Yeah, your personal your personal experience with zines and
Oh, yes.
the differences between fanzines and comic magazines.
Yes. And then, well, comic magazines, I imagine those as just being single issue comic strips or single issue comics. So, you know, 24 to 30 pages, a part of an ongoing series. And then a zine is just a little fun doodad that you can copy and print. My personal experience with them, I started making them a lot after the 2016 election. I saw that my city was just sad, you know, and I really wanted to help people get an outlet for their feelings. And so I asked people to bring them in, email me their like little poetry or stories that they wanted to write about or artwork. And I gave them the size of what they needed. And I put that together, and I think I made 3 or 4 different zines, and we went protesting, and we handed them out to people, and we read them on the street. And I think it was just a really great opportunity for people to hear how the city was feeling about everything. But that's one of the reasons why I like zines. It took like no time, and I was working at the library, so I used their printer. But yeah, as long as you have paper, if you want to mass produce them, then all you need is a Xerox, either a copier, or you can do it completely digitally, because all zines are just 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper, so.
Okay, let's see. You did just mention library. We have a question about that, but first, David Baker asks, do you have a favorite part of the creative process? And if so, what is it, and why do you enjoy it?
I think it depends on what I'm creating. When I'm doing the comic strips, I think my favorite part is explaining the story that I want to tell to my husband. So it's not even writing the story, just explaining the story is enough for me to figure out, is this actually funny? Because I feel like if it's not funny, he would tell me, and I need that. But it's also just kind of fun to like get even like crazier with ideas and just like kind of spiral into, but what if, and kind of make the idea bigger and bigger and bigger. So I guess I guess that's technically the writing part, but I don't really like the actual typing part, because then I have to worry about grammar and spelling and fitting it into 4 panels, and then when it comes to graphic novels, Man, what's the best part about making a graphic novel? You know, I actually kind of like right in the middle of the graphic novel process. So I've been like drawing pages for like 6 months and I still have like a year to go. And I'm really like in the thick of it. That's when it feels the best because I feel like I'm creating something and it's gonna be great and my excitement level is still up. And when it comes to doing something that you love for a career, anything that excites you, you should continue to do, you know? So that's why I keep getting book deals because I want to get that excited feeling.
Okay, so now to go back to the library part. Okay, Stacy Uy asks, can you talk more about your experience working at the library and convincing them to archive zines? And then
Yeah.
the second part to the question, which this will be the last question for this portion.
Okay.
How might people get opportunities at libraries without getting master's degrees?
Yes. Okay. So getting zines into the collection was incredibly difficult. I wish it wasn't. I think it really depends on what kind of library you're working at. You know, my creative partner, Ivy, was working at a library and she could like hand them a bowling ball and say, put this in the collection. And they're like, great, find a place for it, you know? But with my library, we had to go through so much red tape of defining a zine and talking about how the sizes, like, and figuring out where we're going to tag it and how they're going to be disseminated to the public. So it took a while. It took a while. And sometimes it takes people writing, letters to the administration explaining why this is a valuable thing to have in a library system. And I think that was the part that took the longest, is explaining why it was worthwhile. And I think if you're on that path, just remember that zines are basically like the voice of the people, the voice of the people who can't get book deals, or the people who aren't like huge speakers or have a large platform. With zines, you can get the voice of the people and it is free. And that's kind of the point of a library, right? Is to be a community center and be a place of reference and research. And if we're not as much being a part of reference and research because of the internet, then we really need to bulk up that community aspect, you know? And I think that zines are incredibly community focused. The second part of the question, getting into the library system without a master's degree. So I actually worked as a library tech. And so I pretty much did the same thing that librarians did, but for less money. And anyone can get a job as a clerk or a library tech. But with the library tech in particular, I know that they were looking for people to work on event planning, because like I was saying before, libraries are more community centers now than they are as places for research. So a lot of them are looking for people who can put together events that bring people into the library. And so I think that's where I had my advantage, having worked at Star Clipper and creating all of these events that I did when I was working there definitely helped. But moving past that and actually like getting a higher pay, unfortunately, you have to have a master's degree, which is why I left, honestly, because I was doing as much work as a librarian, but they refused to give me a raise unless I had a master's degree. And I dropped out of school for a reason. It's too expensive, you know? So there's a lot to be said about the the industry of libraries and the needs that they make people go through in order to be a librarian. So I feel for anyone trying it. So, okay. You guys want to get into making some zines now? Yeah. Switch my camera to this one. Okay. Let me see if I can switch my camera on really quick. Great. All right. Okay. Can everybody see me okay? You doing good? Okay, great. Okay, so Everyone should have an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. Front and back, empty. I just chose some paper from my printer. So the first thing that you're going to do is you're going to fold your sheet of paper long ways, or as they say in school, hot dog style, right down the middle, okay? So my craft level is not very good. I'm more of a 2D person, so this is why my zine looks like I found it out of the trash. Okay, once you have folded it long ways, open it back up, okay? Then you're gonna fold it short ways. So, like this. Got it? Christina's catching up. You got it. Yeah, nice. Okay, then you're gonna open it up again, okay? Then you're gonna fold it from the top down to the middle, okay? So if you hold it long ways where the short edge is at the top and the long edge is on the side, you're gonna fold from the top down to the middle, okay? Okay, just like that. Then you're going to turn it upside down and do the same thing on the other side. From the top down to the middle. Okay. Look like this. Cool. Then you'll open it back up. And so now you should see you've got 8 rectangles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Those are going to end up being your pages and your front and your back cover. Okay. So once you have this, what you're going to do is you're going to take your scissors or your X-Acto knife and you're going to cut along this middle line here. I'm actually going to highlight it so that you can see it. This is a pen. This is a highlighter. Okay. Whoops. Okay. This here, that line there, that's where you're going to cut. Right in the middle. Where did I put my X-Acto knife? Perhaps I lost it. Oh, there it is on the floor. Got it. Okay, I'm going to use my X-Acto knife. Also, if you're using an X-Acto knife, definitely don't do this directly on a table like I am because your table will get cut, but that's okay. This table's been through enough. I'm going to try that again, make sure it's nice and straight. All right, let's see. Looking good. Nice, perfect. Good job, Christine. Okay, so this next fold is going to be a little hard, so I'm going to try and do this nice and slow. So you're going to fold your sheet in half, long ways. You're going to hold it from kind of like almost towards the middle. And you're going to push it in, okay? You see what I'm doing here? I'm pushing it in. Yes, exactly. And when you push it all the way in, just like this, now it looks like you got like a little T, you know? Exactly. So then you're going to fold the pieces that you're holding inward like this. But now you have, exactly, and then fold your last page over, Christine, so that now you have a cover. Perfect. Let me do that last one just again, just so that you guys get it. It's kind of a weird thing to do. So I'll do it again, but this way. Have it long ways, hold it near the middle, push it in so that it's kind of like a T, and then fold it forward and close the lid. And so now this is where you can really start making sure those lines are nice and crisp. This is actually much better than my first one. But now that those lines are nice and crisp, what I like to do is I like to take my sheet, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to write in small letters, probably in pencil if you want to get rid of it later. But I'm going to put on there, it says, you cannot read. Oh, you can. It says cover. Okay. So I'll put cover on the front, and then every page I'm going to put a little number. 1, 2, flip the page, 3, 4, flip the page, 5, 6, flip the page, back cover. Okay, so now you've got back cover, and then each of your pages should have a little number on the bottom. Now I number them because when I like to do my zines, I don't like to draw really small while the page is folded. What I like to do is I open it all the way back up, spread it out, and then you can see exactly where you need to draw what. Where your back cover is, where your cover, where page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 are. And then remember, follow it how it is written. So like these ones here on the bottom, they're going to be this way facing. And then the ones on the top, you're going to face it like that, you know? So I'll actually open up the one that I did already. See, Martha Stewart style. I already had one made. So I'm going to open up this Columbo one so you can see how it looks. And this is what it looked like when I started working on it. So I had my cover, my back cover, and then this is where I wrote all of the episodes for season 1, and I rated them with a rating system, which I introduced on page 1. So that is my zine. And what's great about zines is that they can be about anything, and it is still a zine. You know, it can be about your favorite episodes of Columbo. It could be about talking about a rug that you bought for $35. You know, that was one of the zines that I read that I really, really loved. That was like, wow, $35 is a really good deal for a living room rug. There's also one on all the beards of past presidents. So you can really get as niche and as specific as you want, or you can make it as general as you want. And just, there was one time I was really bored and I made one where each page was just a different color. I just filled in the colors on every page, and it was my zine of 6 colors. So it's really fun, really easy. So let me turn this off and we can get back to here. Maybe we can ask some more questions. Okay, I am back. Let me. Okay, start video. Host, I need my video to start. Okay, there you have it. So, any other questions about zine making, comics, drawing, editorial, teaching, any of it? And if you have some questions, you can put it in the Q&A. And I think maybe the chat is up again.
Yeah, so we have the chat open and the Q&A open. So feel free. Oh, here we go. Anne Armstrong asks, what advice would you give to young artists?
I would give them the advice that they should never wait until they think they are ready to make a comic, because you will never be ready. I think what's most important when it comes to creation is completion and not perfection. If you say, hey, I did a comic book, I'm not totally sure about how I like the art or the lettering or whatever, but I finished it and it's completely done, you know? And I find that it's disappointing if the thing that stops you is yourself and not, you know, outside forces. So once you have an idea for it, just start. You know, if you don't even know what you're doing, start learning what you should do. Go online, look at some tutorials, or don't use any tutorials at all. You know, you can just kind of run headfirst into comic making. And, you know, I said it earlier, making a comic is really the best way to learn how to do comics. I learned more after my first graphic novel than any tutorial or class that I had taken in school.
Okay, so next we have a question followed by a comment from Vince Alvendia again. What are some of your favorite anime or animated shows or movies? Your style would look amazing animated.
Thank you. My style was actually inspired by cartoons. I never had any interest in being in animation. It looked too hard, so I didn't want to do it. But my inspiration was, my favorite TV show is Hey Arnold, and that's like of all time, even including live action shows. Hey Arnold is my favorite. I also like watching, you know, current TV shows like Steven Universe or Over the Garden Wall. So I try and keep updated on the kind of, you know, TV shows and stuff that are out now. I've watched, you know, My Hero Academia. Let's see, is there any other anime that I've been watching recently besides My Hero Academia? I don't know. I also like pick up from whatever my husband is watching as well. He's really into manga as well. So, you know, I'll take a look at whatever he's watching too. But most of like cartoons wise, I mean, I was interested in like Recess and Doug and Hey Arnold and Angry Beavers. So like all of the like classic 90s cartoons, those are my bread and butter for sure. And it's actually cartoons that got me into comics. I was watching Batman the Animated Series and Superman Adventures, Justice League Unlimited. I mean, I was obsessed with those TV shows. And when I started watching them, that's when I was like, okay, I need to start reading these books. So I was reading graphic novels that I picked up from the library, or I ordered through you know, EBSCOhost, and that's how I really started getting into reading comics, was because of those TV shows.
So, and another question is, who are the cartoonists or comic creators that have inspired you?
I always say my peers are who inspire me. So Shannon Wright, who just did Twins, Wendy Xu, who did Mooncakes and is working on a new book, actually. Gail Galligan, who does or just finished her run on the Babysitters Club books. Who else? Ben Passmore, Ezra Clayton Daniels, Bianca Eunice. Bianca in particular, me and Bianca and Barbara Brandon Craft are the only 3 Black women syndicated comic strip artists, which is like wild. That is just the 3 of us. But so I think me and Bianca have a closer bond for that reason as well.
Okay, so now we have David Baker asking, do you ever work on specific projects with the idea in mind that translate well to another medium, such as a movie or miniseries?
No, never. Mostly because I think they are completely different mediums. And while it's cool to get like, you know, a movie deal out of something that I've illustrated, usually when I am working on a comic, I want it to be a comic. I want it to be read like a comic. I want it to remember it as a comic. I also have a little like chip on my shoulder about that, because so often I'll get people pitching comics because they think that comics are the next step to get to film, which it's not. You know, it's not an intermediary medium. It's its own thing. You know, if you want to make a comic book. If you want to make a movie, make a movie. If they cross, that's cool. But I usually don't like to cross over, really. So if I have something in mind, I'm going to create it how I see it in my mind, which is usually as a comic.
So this kind of speaks to that a little bit. So Grace Moore would like to know, how do you parse out what you'd like to do versus what you think people would want to read?
I only do things that I want to do. If I start thinking about what other people want, then I'm creating for them rather than creating for myself. You know, it's cool if people like what I do and they want to read what I want to read. But overall, I make what I want to make. You know, like with I did a comic on my husband bought the wrong toothpaste once, and it was because they were out of the toothpaste that we usually buy. And I am not one who is great with change. And so I did a whole comic about like the questions I had in my head, like, should I return it? We're already at the grocery store. Should I just get new toothpaste? Who can I give this toothpaste away to? And it's like that kind of thing is hilarious to me. And I want to like get people to read those kinds of comics, those slice of life, hilarious comics that happen. And if I stop to think, well, do people actually care about my need for Aquafresh versus Colgate? The answer would be no. And I wouldn't have made the comic, you know? But then I made it because I wanted to make it. And so many people still say to me, that comic was hilarious. And I enjoyed it. So I usually just do things that I want to do. And instead of thinking about what are other people going to want.
All right, thank you. I love how intimate this is because yes, please keep, submit your questions because Steenz has graciously given us her time to answer them. So Vince Alvendia asks again, what are your outside interests or hobbies that either help you decompress or even maybe inform your art?
That is a great question. So I've been playing around with a lot of different hobbies lately. So I build Gundams for one. I really like building Gundams. I've got a couple behind my window over there. I also like solving jigsaw puzzles. Just my new interest is finding jigsaw puzzles that are like perfect for me and my husband's nerdy interests so that we can put Mod Podge on them and then actually hang them up on the wall. Painting again, I used to paint a lot in school because it was for school, but I really, really liked it. And so I just recently started painting again. I wonder if this is dry yet. Oh, I think it is. So I did a painting that I'm going to actually start drawing over with like Posca marker or something, but it's an oil painting that I did of my cat. So yeah, I like it because I'm not doing it for work and it's just fun and I can just kind of listen to music and paint or paint and watch Columbo and that kind of stuff. So yeah, things like that. Gundams, puzzles, cooking. I just recently learned how to make mitarashi dango. I've been making hanami dango for a while, which is more flavors like mochi and strawberry. And then mitarashi dango is like a savory dango. So that's really fun too. Oh, and then me and my sister have also been learning K-pop dances because this is a K-pop heavy family.
All right.
Okay.
So I think those were all of the questions.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you everyone for joining. I think thank you Steenz so much.
What's my favorite Gundam? I do actually want to answer that question.
Oh yes, go ahead.
I do have a favorite Gundam. And it's this boy here, Guisong. I built him right before I moved into this house, and he's my favorite Gundam because he's short and thick and has a big hammer. So there you go.
All right, thank you so much, Steenz. That was awesome.
You're very welcome.
We enjoyed it. I hope you all enjoyed it too. Steenz has also provided the museum with 2 resource materials that give tips on and advice on pitching comics and breaking into the industry as a writer, cartoonist, and graphic novels, and more. Everyone in attendance tonight will be emailed the link once the materials are published on our museum at homepage. Also, please submit a photo of your finished zine to the email address that we'll post in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be great. I want to see all your zines.
We'd also like to send a special thank you to all of our charter members of the Comic-Con Museum who joined us tonight. We get to do a lot of these different kinds of programs, and come up with new virtual programming for the museum because of charter members and their support. So we do like monthly tours, we do different kinds of member-only events too. If you're interested in becoming a charter member of the Comic-Con Museum, you can go to our website, comic-con.org/museum, and you can check out all the information on our charter membership program. It's a really great way to get on the ground floor of the museum, see all the updates and developments that are happening right now. And it's just support your love of popular culture. And as we saw tonight, I think there's a lot of stuff that we covered tonight. And thank you again, Steenz, for going through all of the processes you go through. So yeah, and now I'd like to introduce Eddie Ibrahim, the Senior Director of Programming for Comic-Con Museum and San Diego Comic-Con Convention. Eddie? I think he's booting that.
All right, there we go. Sorry, I had a little bit of trouble getting my video up. First of all, I would like to thank everybody for attending. It's great to have you guys be a part of what we do. We really want to also send some appreciation to Steenz. Thank you so much for taking the time and being a part of this. It's great to have that type of outreach to the fans of the museum and to our members. And definitely, I think for a lot of them, it is a way to connect with those things that they love, which I know is difficult to do at this time. So beyond just being informative and entertaining, you probably brought a lot of light and joy to people. So Steenz, you should definitely be proud of that. And we're very thankful that you would take the time for that. I would also like to thank our interpreters, Kaitlin and Mariah, for being here and doing this for us. We definitely want to make sure that we are accessible and want to make sure that everyone gets the opportunity to enjoy these events. Just a reminder too, we are going to be posting a recording of this panel on the Comic-Con Museum YouTube page. So if you have friends or family who weren't able to join us, might be a great chance or opportunity for them to watch it as well. Or even if you just want to kind of rewatch to get further details on how to make the zine itself, that's a great way to do it. Be sure to follow our social media, the @Comic-Con Museum, and the website, which is comiccon-org/museum, for more info on upcoming events, including a pop culture bingo that is going to be on Tuesday, December 15th. And as you can probably guess, if you were involved in the other pop culture bingo we did, this is going to be related to our Comic-Con Museum Character Hall of Fame, which is coming up on December 17th. And we are inducting Pac-Man into the Hall of Fame. So hopefully we can see all of you get an opportunity to sign up. You can come to our website for more information on that. That'll be a live stream event as well. And we're very excited to have our next inductee for the Comic-Con Museum Hall of Fame. And with that, I would again like to thank all of you for participating and watching and being a part of this. And we definitely hope to see you again for more events to come. Thank you very much.